Hi! Hello, I am back after quite a long absence, after just only my second video. Literally just after the second video went live, we went on holiday, we went backpacking around Malaysia, Borneo and Singapore, and that was absolutely amazing. But we only got back mid-November and it felt like it was just like Christmas was on top of us already. It was just insane. So, and then both of my children fell ill. I fell ill. We had, it was just crazy. So trying to find time to do these videos has just been impossible. So I'm taking the advantage of a quiet minute now, and I'm going to talk to you about my top 14. It should have been 10 actually, but top 14 favourite reads of 2019. I did want to do my top 10 and I thought it would be quite easy to pick out my top 10, but that was me being naive because it's actually really difficult. And just to give you an idea of how difficult a job this has been, I'll read some of my stats to you. Now these literally cover the last 6 months, so from the end of June up to right now today, and it's the 30th of December when I'm filming this, so I have got right to the end of the year before looking at these stats. And well, we had 5 1-stars. And I don't know if that's good or not because this is my first ever year of doing stats and looking back over what I've read and things like that. So 5 1-stars in 6 months. I guess it's all right. 0 2-stars, which is odd. But then I gave 23 stars. So it seems, when I'm looking at it now, that I either think something is okay or terrible. It's like there's no in between. So maybe that's something I need to look at. Maybe some of those 1-stars could be 2s, or maybe some of those 3s are actually 2s. I don't know. I find that quite hard. I either enjoy it and find it okay, or I don't. So I think 2 is a bit of a grey area for me. And then 4 stars. There was 32 4-star reads in 6 months, and I think that's amazing. I have found some absolutely brilliant books, and even though I didn't do a stats video of the first half of the year, I can tell you now that the number of 4 and 5 stars has definitely increased, and that's because I was taking part in like a monthly reading group challenge, and you kind of score points based on how many books you read that are relevant to certain points and things like that. And I got into this habit of reading books that fit the prompts but that I wasn't actually probably that interested in, that had possibly never even been on my radar before. So I did end up with quite a few 1s and 2s. I went through a good patch. I think it was in June actually. I think about 5 books in a row that I read were all really low rated books, and it just put me in this horrible slump. And so I just kind of made a conscious effort to, even though I was still going to do the challenges, I was going to do it more fun and actually read things that I wanted to read, and that has shown a massive improvement for me, because I also rated 35 books as 5 stars. So out of, what did I read? 30, 60, 70, 80. So I read 92 books between the 1st of July and today, and 67 of those are either 4 or 5 stars, so that is incredible. And that is why this video has been so hard to try and decide which are my top books, and I could have done more than 14 easily. But what I did was I picked out the ones that really stood out for a reason. So they're not in any order, other than the very last one is my best of the best of the best 2019, so I'll tell you about that right at the end, but not in any order. I've got The Power by Naomi Alderman. This is it's a dystopian, and I'm not sure if it's YA, but it's possibly around that age group. It's basically all across the world, teenage girls are suddenly developing this ability or this power to have electricity running through their bodies, and they start using it to defend themselves or to fight people, to hurt people. So it's not just certain girls, it's every single teenage girl starts developing these powers. And this is what the whole story is about these girls coming into this power, how different girls, who it follows several different girls and how they are using that power, and also how it changes society. So that was actually really interesting, because quite a lot of dystopian books are stories where women are on the bottom. Women are the ones who are subjected to, you know, whatever the changes are, in a negative way. So, you know, men rule, men become more powerful, women aren't allowed to speak, women aren't allowed to do this, women can't have money, blah blah blah. So this was actually really interesting, that it was women that had the power and women that ruled, and that was just so good. The next, well, it's not a book, it's in fact the next 3 are series. So the first one is The Southern Ghost Hunter Mysteries by Angie Fox, and these are based in the deep south of America, and the lead character throughout the whole books, Verity, she gains this power to be able to speak to ghosts, and she has a ghost residing on her property who she becomes friends with, and together they go off solving mysteries and solving murders and crimes. And it's just, they're not my kind of book really, normally, but so I chose these because I really have enjoyed them. Like every single one I've read, I think there's 8 full novels, and then there's 3 or 4 like novellas that slot in at various places, and every single one I've rated as 5-star. They're just so easy to read, like I fly through them. They're really fun. The next one, the Alice in Zombieland series by Gina Showalter. Now, people that know me know I'm obsessed with zombies. Like, I absolutely love zombies. Zombie books, zombie films, zombie games, anything. I love zombies. But these are a YA series that they've got that kind of, you know, the Twilight feel to them. Like this, there's a bad boy and he's, you know, out of bounds and she really shouldn't be falling in love with him and things like that. It's got all the usual cheesy tropes that I thought I was past. I thought that my teenage girl era had gone, but actually I really enjoyed these. So they're not an actual retelling of Alice in Wonderland. Basically there's zombies, and this girl, she develops some strength and some skills, and she goes training with people who fight zombies, and that's about it really. She just fights zombies, and then she falls in love, and then her friends fall with the other boys in the group, and it's just really cheesy, really teenage, but I really enjoyed them. They're just nice and fun, easy to read. The next series is the Butterfly Garden series by Dot Hutchinson. I think, off the top of my head, I think there's four of these books now. They're sort of a series. It's the same detectives that are involved throughout, but the actual plot doesn't continue. It's like different cases that these detectives work on. And the first one, the Butterfly Garden, they a girl gets kidnapped, and when she wakes up, she finds that she's being held captive in this mansion that has like an atrium kind of thing, and there's lots of other girls there who have also been kidnapped and held captive, and the person that's the kidnapper, he names these girls all after different species of butterflies, and they all get tattooed on the backs with the wings of those butterflies that they are named after, hence the butterfly garden. And it's just your usual kind of thriller of, you know, these girls trying to escape and the police hunt, you know, trying to find the missing girls and all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing amazing about it. It's just a well-written series, and what's good is that every single one of them are on Kindle Unlimited. So if you do subscribe to the Kindle Unlimited on Amazon, then you can read every single one of those for free. And I think that's really good, because quite often when you get a good series like that, it's the first book that is free and then you then have to pay for the rest. There's a lot of single standalone books that I've rated highly, and the first one is The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn. Now this was talked about so much across the book community, and everybody was hyping it up. It was set to become a movie at one point, and I don't know if it still is, but I've not heard anything. And then all of a sudden, the hype kind of turned into criticism, and not because of the book, but because of the author. There was some kind of controversy around the author, that he'd been saying things. I'm not sure if he'd faked an illness or said that his relative had an illness to kind of get some sympathy, or I don't know. To be honest, I didn't want to go into it, and I didn't want to know, because lots and lots of people were saying that they had wanted to read the book, but then once they'd heard this this information on the author, that they then didn't want to read the book. They refused to support him by buying it and reading it and reviewing it, etc. And I thought, well, I'm not interested. I don't want to get into that. I just want to read the book, and if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. So I haven't read a proper, like a psychological thriller like that in years, and I went into it thinking, yeah, it'll be about a 3-star probably, it might be about average, and I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I've passed the book on to my dad, who reads a lot of similar stuff to me, and he doesn't like it at all. He thinks it's boring. So I think it's one of those books where you either love it or hate it, but it's definitely one that you've got to try. And for me, it just kind of reignited this interest in psychological thrillers, and since then I've actually been and purchased a ton more whenever I see them in the charity shops and stuff. I am going to give that genre or subgenre another go just because of that book. So, well, this is one that everybody will probably rate. When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. It's incredible. There's nothing else I can say to describe this. It's a book about a man who becomes a surgeon, and not long after he's done his training, he gets diagnosed with lung cancer. I suppose his journey through being a new surgeon and then turning from doctor into patient, and then it also kind of, well, we know it was published posthumously, so I'm not going to spoil anything by saying that it then follows his journey to his death, and how he approaches that, how his wife approaches that, and it's awful. Like, it's amazing, but it's awful. It's just so heartbreaking. And it is one of those books that you've just got to read. Like, everybody is talking about this book, and there's a reason for it. It really is one of those that you just have to read to to understand what everyone's talking about and why it's loved so much. Keeping on the trend of books that everybody talks about, another one that I highly rated was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. If you ask me which genres I don't read, that I would have zero interest in, I would say straight off romance, westerns and historical fiction. Yet I rated this book 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. I really didn't think I was going to at all, so that's why I've chosen this to be in one of my top 14, because this, like, I read it and I absolutely loved it, and since then I think I've read about, well, there was like a huge influx then in the book community of various people who were in Auschwitz. You know, so there's like the librarian, the pharmacist, the child, the woman or whatever. There's loads of them. And I have read quite a number of those since reading this first one, and I just think that deserves to be in my top 14 purely because it helped me to get past this I don't do historical fiction kind of thing, and it's sparked this kind of love for that. It's like a micro genre, isn't it? Because I've not gone off to all other historical fiction. It's just about that, you know, that one period. But I have really been enjoying them. Going back to the medical kind of things, there's Fragile Lives by Stephen Westerby, and this is a memoir of a world famous heart surgeon, and he basically, each chapter is just an interesting case that he has worked on, that he remembers for whatever reason, and he's done things like, he was like the first surgeon in the world ever to do a certain operation on the heart. He was partly responsible for inventing a certain piece of medical equipment, things like that. And I can't give you exact details because I just don't remember exactly what they were, but the cases were incredible. When people say the doctors hold your life in their hands, this guy really did. I mean, he was holding people's hearts, he was operating on people's hearts, and this really hit home for me because when I was born, I had a hole in my heart and nobody knew, and I was poorly on and off, but nobody knew why. And then at 6 weeks old I suddenly went into heart failure and I went blue and floppy and not responsive, etc. And I was rushed straight to the Children's Hospital in Liverpool, and I had open heart surgery to repair the problem, and then I spent the next 6 months of my life in hospital. So for me, reading about a surgeon, a heart surgeon, and about their thoughts and the training and the hours they work and all that, it just, I don't know, it was just incredible. And the next book I want to tell you about is staying with the medical memoir type books, and it's called A Woman of Firsts by Edna Ismail Adan. And this was the first ever NetGalley ARC that I received, and oh my gosh, did I get a good one. Like, I could not put this book down. It was incredible. The woman is incredible. I mean, I seriously don't think she's had a normal, mundane, average day in her life. Like, this woman, she's just, like, it's unbelievable what she's done. She was raised by her parents who, they were, I guess, more forward thinking than other people of their time and in their communities, and they made sure she got an education, whereas other girls in their community in Africa didn't get an education at that time, or didn't get much of one. She decided that she wanted, her dad was a doctor, and she decided she wanted to go into medicine as well, and she decided to become a nurse. And she also trained as a midwife at some point in her career, and she came over to England, trained as a nurse on a specific kind of scholarship program that meant that she would then, at the end of her training, go back to her home country and look after, you know, the people in her village. And she ended up being the only midwife, and I think it was the only nurse in the entire of her village community. And she was kind of doing the job of a doctor at times, without much support. And having worked in medicine myself as a nurse, like, we complain if we're short-staffed. We complain if we haven't had a chance to go for a wee during our shift. We complain if, you know, we're running low on stock of, I don't know, like syringes or something. You know, this woman nursed people and helped ladies give birth through civil war, through, you know, an entire kind of community that believed in genital mutilation of girls. And also she had to contend with, I think it's pronounced Hargeisa, something like that, the Hargeisa Holocaust. And she still did her job. And yeah, she must have complained at some point, obviously, but it just throws all of our problems and our complaints, it just kind of, they just all go out the window when you know that there's people, and there probably still is people in these communities, you know, in impoverished parts of the world, that are still nursing and being a doctor and looking after people in those conditions, and we're complaining that we've not had a break. I mean, it just astounded me what this lady has done. And she was the first woman to lead the kind of the war against female genital mutilation. She went out there educating people against everyone's beliefs and against community leaders, really, because nobody wanted her to do this stuff. They were all saying that she was wrong for putting these ideas into girls' heads, that they shouldn't be mutilated, or that there shouldn't be female circumcision. And then she talks about the difficulties of having to care for people who have been circumcised, of women trying to give birth through deformed genitals, basically, and heavily scarred tissue. And it's heartbreaking what she's had to help people through. And I just, honestly, this woman, I mean, she's still fighting the fight. She is still out there educating people. She is still out there teaching new students, new nurses, what, you know, all the practices. And this woman is just, she's just so inspirational. And then the last, I think it's the last one in the medical type books, I do read a lot of them. This one, it was another arc from NetGalley, and it's called In the Hot Zone by, I can't pronounce this one, by Mark Corti-Peter. I'm not sure. Sorry, I've just butchered your name. This is, it's kind of a memoir, a doctor slash scientist that worked in the army as like a bio defence, and also he worked in, I think you pronounce it, Usamrid. So basically he was one of the people who helped to develop cures and treatment against deadly contagious things such as Ebola, botulism, anthrax, things like that. We all remember, or possibly most of us remember, the anthrax incidents over in America years ago, where terrorists were sending letters to journalists and media places that had anthrax in them. And we kind of, this all comes on the news when these incidents happen, but we don't kind of know what happens behind the scenes or how it all gets resolved. We just kind of get told it's sorted now, that's it. There was an Ebola outbreak and it was spreading like wildfire over in Africa a few years back, and there was documentaries on it, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. But we don't, like, it kind of just like petered out. And it kind of became less of a news story, and then eventually it wasn't a news story, and I would say most of us don't know what happened, how it got sorted. But so this book is literally the behind the scenes of exactly what goes on in the US military when they're trying to come up with vaccines and treatments, and also they're also trying to store samples of these for future use, so that if somewhere anybody has wrongly stored it for future use against people in some kind of biological warfare, then the US and, you know, hopefully other military organisations will have their own in store that they can then work with to try and develop vaccines or to try and update their knowledge on. And one of the things that came across was this incredibly frustrating hierarchy, politics and red tape. And you would think, you know, oh my god, it's an emergency, let's get this sorted. And actually no, it's oh my god, this is an emergency, but hang on a minute, what does the policy say? You know, it's just really, I don't know, it's you kind of think, what on earth are these people thinking? Like, why can't they just sort it out, instead of I have to get permission off him, and then they have to get permission off them, and then they have to have a look at this policy, and then they have to have a meeting with the legal team, and you know, and you just think, what on earth, just get on with it. So this book was kind of like the, you know, the down and dirty of all that, and it's really, really good. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I found myself in the bathroom because my husband was in bed and didn't want to turn the light on, and I was stood in the bathroom at like gone midnight googling Ebola googling pictures of botulism victims because I wanted to know what that was all about. And when you find yourself doing that, and then you start thinking, if Big Brother is watching me they're probably going to be wondering what on earth I am doing googling all this stuff. But it's at that point that you know that you've got this incredible book in your hands, because it really has piqued your interest in something that much that you can't put it down, you can't walk away from it, you've got to go and research it a little bit more. And actually that leads me on to the next one that did this, and it was called The Troop by Nick Cutter, and it's a horror book. And basically a group of Boy Scouts, or a troop of Scouts, they go on a trip with their leader onto this island. This guy that's sick arrives, and there's like some kind of parasite inside him, and then I'm not going to go into any more detail because it ruins it. But at one point they mentioned something about zombie ants. Well, that was it. So again, I found myself in the bathroom hiding at, I think this time it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30, googling videos on YouTube of zombie ants, because I couldn't get it out of my head. I needed to see what it was, and it's a real thing. It is a real thing. Zombie ants. Go and check it on YouTube. But this book is weird AF. It really is. It's proper messed up, and it's horror, and it's guts, and it's blood, and it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. But do not read it if you are a sensitive soul, because it really, really is messed up. And then another one I wanted to tell you about is called One of Us by Craig DeLuey. I anticipated it being a 5-star read, and it really was. It did not disappoint for a second. This book is incredible. Basically, the there's children being born that are mutated. Some of them are mutated like deformed people, and some of them are like part animal and part human and things like that. So the main character is a boy who's got a dog's head. There's very much To Kill a Mockingbird vibes, I would say, because it's kind of racism but against these mutated kids. It's like if you would have replaced the children with black people when slaves were a problem, you know, when there was the slave trade about in America, if you would have told this story but replaced it with black people, it would have worked. The story would have worked the same, I would say. It had that vibe to it, like that looking down on these people as if they were lesser beings, treating them. I mean, these kids were taken to people's farms and they had to work the farmland for free, as part of, like, I don't know, apologising to the community for being what they were. I don't know. So it did have that very slave trade type vibe to it. And it was such a good story. Now, there is a bit of blood and guts in this, not major amounts, but I think this is an incredible book. The next to last book I want to tell you about is called The Hatching by, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ezekiel. No, I think it's Ezekiel Boone. Sorry if I've got that wrong. This basically, it reminded me of, if anyone's ever watched the film Arachnophobia, was that the 80s? The film Arachnophobia, where these spiders come from like the Amazon or wherever inside a crate of belongings, and then they run amok over this, this town and killing people. It was that sort of. So these spiders were accidentally brought in from somewhere else. They were mating with local spiders that were then producing these weird offspring that, there was these breeding nests everywhere, and then all of a sudden these spiders hatched and they overran, like flesh-eating, overran the towns, the cities, everything. And they, because people were going on flights overseas, these spiders were hitching a ride kind of thing, and Delhi in India was victim to them. It was just the whole world, and people looking at maps of the world with parts blotted out with spiders. It was just fun. It was one of those that it's a bit creepy, but it's quite fun. It's a bit realistic, but it's a bit unrealistic. I don't know. I just enjoyed it, and I knew. I said right from the beginning of first ever seeing this book on the shelf in the shop that it's going to be a 5-star read. And then it took me months and months to get around to it, and when I read it, oh my god, it was amazing. Now, it's part of a series, and I've not read books 2 and 3 yet, but I am going to get around to them. I absolutely loved it. And then the very, very last book I want to tell you about, because I've kept you for way, way too long, is The Bunker Diary by Kevin Brooks. This book, I read this mid-April, and still today I think about it. It's one of them. And I'd never heard anybody speak about it before. Now, I went through a phase at the start of the year and I watched hundreds and hundreds of older YouTube videos from, book reviewers, and somebody somewhere mentioned this book only once, and it sounded interesting, so I bought it, and oh my god. And I'm really sorry I can't credit that YouTuber because I've completely forgot who it was, but oh my god. This is another book that is absolutely messed up AF, seriously, like, it is freaky. If you're a sensitive person, do not read this book. Basically, a boy gets kidnapped, a teenage boy, he gets kidnapped, and when he wakes up, he's in a bunker. And I can't really tell you anything else without giving away the story. However, other people end up in there with him. And then it's about the story of them being abducted and held hostage, or held kidnapped or whatever. And seriously, like, I read it in the space of about 3 hours, this book. I did not put it down. It was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, like, keep going, keep going. And I got to the very last page and I was like, turned it over, and there was a few more pages, so I didn't realise I was on the last page. So I was like, turned it over, and it was blank, and I was like, to the next one, and that was blank, and I was like, oh my God, and they were all blank. And the story just left me. It just left me on the edge of this cliff. Oh my God. Like, all the feels. Seriously. It's the only problem is, as much as I loved it, I can't read it again because I know, and it's the very last bit that gets you. But I already know what's going to happen. And it's one of them where you think, I wish I could go back in time and reread it again without knowing what, just to experience it again. Like, so I passed it on to my dad, who's in it, well, he's just turned 70. And I was like, Dad, this is awful, this story. Like, it's amazing, but it's awful and it's horrible. And you need to read this because I need to talk to somebody about it. And so he read it really quickly and he rang me up. and he was like, so that book? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, what the hell happened there? I'm like, I don't know. It was like, and even he was going, I don't know what to say. That was just weird. And I'm like, I know it was. I'm like, finally somebody. So it's incredible, and it's horrible, and it's disgusting, and it's amazing, and it leaves your head messed up, and it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and there's no sequel, and it just, it screws with you, proper screws with you. But please go and read it because it really is amazing. And it's stuck with me. So, and I'd love to have more people to talk to it about. I really would, because I just need to talk to somebody about this, so it's not just me going crazy in my head. And so that is everything. That is all the top books of 2019 for me. And I hope you've found it interesting and possibly found a few new books to read. And I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and has a great new year, and I will see you all soon. Bye.